everyone. Welcome to WorksheetCloud Grade 9 Natural Sciences, presented by Mrs. Ernston. If you have any questions during the lesson, please send an email with your question to grade9@worksheetcloud.com and we'll get back to you with the answers. So our topic for today's lesson is atoms, elements, molecules, compounds, and mixtures. Now for most of you, this is just going to be revision of grade 8 work, and it's just for you to check your understanding of these terms and definitions before we move on to slightly more complicated chemistry. The other things we will cover this lesson is what is a compound. We're going to have a look at how a compound is different from an element, and how a mixture of elements is different from a compound. You're also going to learn what diatomic molecules are and that atoms in a molecule combine in a fixed ratio. Before we continue with the lesson, I'd love you to have everything ready. So you might need to pause the screen while you go off and collect everything. That's not a problem. I'll wait for you. So I hope that you have your pens and paper and books and everything ready. And then along with that, towards the end of the lesson, we're going to be having a bit of creative fun. And we're going to be building models that are going to help us with the terms and definitions that we learn. So in order to do that, you will need to go and scrounge around the house and see what you can find. So here are some examples for you, some different blocks of Lego or coins. Maybe you can find some bottle top lids or beads or buttons. Maybe there's sweets or beans and things in the cupboard, or maybe your siblings have got some Play-Doh. So if you just press pause on the screen, I'll wait for you while you go and find some items. Yay, welcome back. Now you are all ready. Let's proceed with the lesson. The first activity that I think we need to do is we need to brainstorm what you can remember from grade 8 matter and materials. And this is very important because I need to find out what can you remember from last year that is going to be able for you to link it with whatever you learn today. So have your pens and paper ready. And you might need to pause the screen again. What I'd like you to do is talk out loud or write down everything that you can remember about atoms, elements, compounds, and mixtures. Sure, so some of you can remember lots of things and others of you not so much. Well, that's not a problem. You'll be able to go back to the grade 8 lesson on matter and materials and revise there. However, today's lesson should still be fun and interesting for you. The first thing that I'd like to look at are pure substances. So all matter can be classified as mixtures of substances or pure substances. A pure substance can be further classified as elements or compounds. So if we have a look here, these two diagrams here are pure substances and these diagrams here are a mixture. So if we have a look at the first substance here, this substance only contains pink circles. And if we have a look at this substance here, it contains a cluster of circles together where one is green and two are pink. Here's another cluster where one is green and two are pink. One is green and two are pink. So again, these are the same clusters within the substance. If we have a look at a mixture, here we have pink circles as well as clusters of molecules of purple, green, and orange. And here again, we have clusters of yellow and blue and clusters of purple, green, and orange. So let's start out by looking at what is an atom. So Atoms are the smallest building blocks of matter, the smallest particle of a chemical element that can exist on its own, and an atom has the same chemical properties of the elements. So if we have a look at this diagram over here, it is an element and it consists of atoms that are all of the same kind. So for example, in this container, we have pink atoms and all the atoms in this container are pink. Before we go any further, I would like you to also try and answer some of these questions. I just want to see what your basic understanding of the terms and definitions are before we go any further. So the question is, do you think the substance represented in this diagram is an element? So here is the diagram. You may need to pause the video and get out your pen and paper while you answer these 6 questions. It's not a problem. I'll wait for you. Thank you for completing that activity. Well, let's get down to answering those questions together. Question 1, write down what you see in the picture. Now, we're all going to have different answers here because we're all going to interpret the picture differently, but I'm sure most of us are going to say that we see small colored circles. The color of the circles is blue, and there are only blue circles. And then the other thing that we notice is the circles exist as clusters of 2. Question 2. Do you think it is a mixture of substances or a pure substance? And why do you think so? So this is a pure substance because all the atoms and all the molecules in this picture are the same color. Are the atoms all of the same kind? Yes, they are all blue circles. What class of substances is made up of only one kind of atom? And that's elements. Is this substance an element? Yes. And why? Well, we'll answer this in the next slide. And can elements be made up of molecules? Yes, they can. So what are elements? An element is a pure substance. An element consists of only one kind of atom. That means that an element cannot be changed into other elements by any physical or chemical process. Elements can be made up of individual atoms, as we see here in this diagram here. There's individual atoms of pink dots, or they as bonded pairs of atoms called diatomic molecules. We will look at the term diatomic molecules a little later in this lesson. But in this diagram here, you can see that the atoms, which are represented by the colored circles, are bonded together. So this is just a pictorial representation of atoms, of elements. So this diagram here shows atoms of 2 elements. One is an atom of oxygen and one is an atom of hydrogen. And here we're showing you molecules of the same element. So here are 2 atoms of hydrogen and it is 1 molecule. Here we have 1 molecule of O3 and that is made up of 1, 2, 3 atoms of oxygen. So what is a molecule? A molecule is 2 or more atoms that have chemically bonded with each other. So if you have a look at this diagram here, there's a yellow atom, there's a blue atom, they're chemically bonded together. Here's a yellow atom, there's a blue atom, they're chemically bonded together. Or if we have a look at this diagram here, here is a purple atom, a green atom, and an orange atom, and they're chemically bonded together. If we have a look at this here, there's a purple atom, a green atom, an orange atom, and they're chemically bonded together. And that is all we find in this container. If we go to this container over here, we have a green atom and it's bonded to two pink atoms. Here we have a green atom bonded to two pink atoms, and that is all we have in this container. So a molecule can be from atoms from the same or from different elements. So if we have a look at this block here, these are atoms from the same element. If we have a look at this block here, here is a molecule, but it's got atoms from two different elements. You can have a molecule of an element, or you can have a molecule of a compound. So here is a molecule of an element, and here is a molecule of a compound. In this diagram here we have a molecule of an element, and here we have a molecule of another element. Please just remember that not all elements have molecules. So earlier on I said we were going to speak about what diatomic molecules are. Now the word di means two, and atomic can refer to atoms. So this picture of an element that we had a look earlier shows what diatomic molecules look like. So there is a molecule and it's made up of two atoms, and both these atoms come from the same element. So di meaning two, atomic atoms. So here is a diatomic molecule of oxygen, and here is a diatomic molecule of nitrogen. So oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen, and some other elements from the right, non-metals on the right side of the periodic table, all form diatomic molecules. So if we go through these elements again, it's hydrogen, nitrogen, fluorine, oxygen, iodine, chlorine, bromine. And if we have a look at where do we find these on the periodic table, there is hydrogen, there is nitrogen, there is oxygen, and there is fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. And a really good way to remember which molecules are diatomic is the little saying, have no fear of ice cold beer. So H in have is hydrogen, N in no is nitrogen, F in fear is fluorine, O in of is oxygen, I in ice is iodine, C in cold is chlorine, and B in beer is bromine. So I'm sure you're not going to forget your diatomic molecules. Then what is a compound? So compounds are formed when two or more different elements or two or more different atoms have combined. The atoms are chemically bonded in the same fixed ratio, and compounds can be formed and broken down in chemical reactions. So if we have a look here is a compound. We've got three atoms that have chemically combined. We've got one green atom and two pink atoms. So the ratio is going to be one green as to two pink. In this diagram here, we have two different elements. One atom is yellow and one atom is blue. So the atoms combine in a ratio of 1 as to 1. Here we have another compound, and this is made up of three different elements or three different atoms. One purple, one green, one orange. So they combine in a ratio of 1 as to 1 as to 1. One purple, one green, one orange. Just as an example to help you with your understanding, let us have a look at the compound water, which I'm sure you realize is H2O. Scientists know that a water molecule is made up of one oxygen atom, which in this case is red, and two hydrogen atoms, which in this case is white. All water molecules are exactly the same. The atoms are bonded in a fixed ratio of 2 hydrogen atoms for every 1 oxygen atom. And then the atoms in a molecule are held together by a special force that we call a chemical bond. And we'll look at that in some of our future lessons. So just to recap our knowledge, how is a compound different to an element? So if we have a look at an element is a material that is made up of atoms of only one kind. So in this container here, we only have pink atoms. If we have a look at a compound is made up of two or more different atoms or elements that have combined, and the atoms are chemically bonded in a fixed ratio. So in this diagram here, we have two different elements. We have a pink element and a green element, or a pink atom and a green atom, and they are chemically bonded. So what then is a mixture? So mixtures are combinations of two or more elements, or mixtures are combinations of two or more compounds. In grade 8 and 9, Matter and Materials, you would have learnt how components in a mixture can be separated by physical separation methods such as sieving, filtration, evaporation, distillation, and chromatography. And you will be able to find this lesson in grade 8 Matter and Materials. But if we just have a look at the definition and link it up with the diagrams. So mixtures are combinations of two or more elements or compounds. So in this diagram here, if I have a look, I can see an atom or pink atom, a pink element. Here's another pink atom. There's another pink atom. There's another pink atom. Remember, this atom is also an element. I can also see a compound. Here we have a compound of purple, green, and orange. And here we have another compound of purple, green, and orange. So in this diagram here, we have a mixture, and it's made up of pink elements and a compound of purple, green, and orange. In this container here, we have two compounds. We have one compound that's yellow and blue, and we have another compound that is purple, green, and orange. So how is a mixture different to a compound? Well, in a mixture, it is a combination of two or more elements, or a mixture is a combination of two or more compounds, whereas a compound is made up of two or more different elements that have chemically combined. So in this diagram here, you'll see we only have one type of compound that fills the container. In this diagram here, we have compounds and we have atoms. So we can separate the substances in this container. Whereas in this container here, it's all the same type of substance. You will find this summary in our WorksheetCloud section of worksheets. So you're more than welcome to go and copy it down, and you can use it as a basic summary or concept map for the work we've done, and you can add your own definitions and diagrams, and I'm sure that this will help you when you come to study for tests or exams. So now for some fun in our lesson. Now it's time for you to make your own models so that you can show me or your family or your teacher when you eventually get back to school your understanding of atoms, elements, compounds, molecules of elements, molecules of compounds, and mixtures. So you'll probably need to pause the screen now while you go off and you use whatever material you could find around the house, and you try and build these models for me so that you can check that you have the correct understanding of these terms. So this is an activity that I did with the pupils in my class. So we use these colored counting blocks. So if we have a look here, A can be seen as two blue atoms. So A can be seen as an element. It can also be seen as a molecule of an element. B can be seen as a single atom. C can be seen as a mixture. It's a mixture of a diatomic molecule and a molecule of a compound. This can be seen as a compound made up of 4 brown atoms and 1 blue atom. This can also be seen as a compound. It can also be seen as a molecule. So it's a compound because it's made up of 2 blue atoms and 1 brown atom, and it can also be seen as a molecule. And again here, we can have a molecule of an element, or it's just plain elements. You will also find this activity with memos and answers on our WorksheetCloud worksheet section. So just one revision exercise again quickly before we say goodbye today. So here we've got 4 blocks, A, B, C, and D. I want you to see if you are able to work out which blocks go with which definitions, and it is possible that some blocks may be used twice. So if we have a look at the first one, what block best represents an atom? I would say that it is C. Here we have little pink circles that represents an atom. Block C could also represent an element. If we have a look at D, D is 2 atoms that are chemically combined together. So we could refer to that as a diatomic molecule. We can also refer to that as an element. If we have a look at this diagram here, I can see I've got 2 atoms of an element made up of white circles, and I've got 2 atoms chemically combined together of an element made up of blue circles. So that is one molecule of an element, and that is another molecule of an element. That is also a diatomic molecule, and that is also a diatomic molecule. So B can be seen as a mixture. And if we have a look at A is a compound. So all the substances in this diagram are the same, and they are all compounds made up of 1 blue atom and 3 white atoms. So here is a little worksheet that we can do quickly. What you can do again is you can pause the screen while you answer these questions, and I will wait for you and we'll go through the answers together just now. So each of the 6 blocks are labeled A to F, and they all contain some matter. So here we have A, B, C, D, E, and F. You must answer the following questions in the diagrams in the blocks. Each question may have more than one answer. So you can pause the screen now while you try and answer these questions. Now I know you found that exercise really, really easy because you've listened hard and you've worked hard and you now understand all the terms and definitions. And I'm sure your fun little creative activity helped you too. So if we have a look, question 1, which blocks represent the particles of an element? And I think this is best represented with diagram C. Question 2, which blocks represent the particles of a compound? And I think that's best represented with B, D, and E. Question 3, which blocks represent the particles of a mixture? And I think that's best represented with A and F. And then which block represents the particles of a pure substance? And that will be B, C, D, and E. And I hope you got most of those answers correct. So we've come to the end of our lesson now. So I hope that you have learnt about atoms, elements, molecules, compounds, and mixtures. And we have covered each of these criteria that we laid out at the beginning of the lesson. But just before you go, please can you just do a 3-2-1 activity for me quickly? I would like you to write down 3 facts that you can remember from the lesson, 2 new facts that you learned today, and 1 question that you have. And you can email this question to grade9@worksheetcloud.com and we'll get back to you with the answers. Thank you so much for staying tuned and connected with us today. So grade 9s, I had a wonderful time, and this lesson was brought to you by Worksheet Cloud. So goodbye from me, Mrs. Ernston. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.